Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vandaele. I'm a researcher at the European Trade Union Institute. In my paper, I try to answer the question if young and new union members are drivers for union change, and I do that on the basis of analysis of survey data. When I look at membership in Europe, I think it's characterized by two features, at least when I look at mainstream unions. First one is instrumentalism, meaning that members are more likely to join a union for instrumental reasons than for ideological reasons. The unions trying to shield workers from labor market risks is already a future of unions from the very outset, so there's nothing wrong with that. But if unions are emphasizing too much their benefits or their services, then there might be a higher risk that members are leaving the unions if those services are better or cheaper provided by other actors. And a second characteristic is that most of the members of a union are passive or non-active. There are estimates that maybe 5 to 10% of the union members are actually active. This runs the risks that unions are not fit for fighting against, for instance, union bustings of employers or against austerity measures of governments. So the question is how to reorientate the dominant service-oriented relationship between members and unions. I found inspiration in two strands of literature. One is the old literature on union commitment, and the second one is on union revitalization, especially focusing on young workers. And as Maite and colleagues are saying, maybe young workers can bring fresh ideas, creative energy, and innovative imagination to the unions. I try to operationalize this via the willingness of unions, but also new members, to take up small, routine-like union tasks inspired by organizing unionism. And I did that on the basis of a survey of new members of a Belgian union. Some context of the Belgian situation: union density is still high and stable, about 55%. This could be explained by unions combining union mobilizing and their institutional embeddedness, especially the Ghent system. At the same time, in the last couple of years, especially for one union confederation, there's some membership decline. If you look at, especially at this Ghent system is in fact delivering a passive membership of consumers of union services, at least at the structural level. About one in 3 members are using this Ghent system. Either they are unemployed or on early retirement. I think it's time for the Belgian unions to prioritize organizing or moving away from the traditional services model, and they also become more and more aware of this, given the recent membership decline. There are a number of reasons why they could prioritize organizing. First of all, there's an increased political pressure on the union's institutional embeddedness, at least in the discourse of the current government. Unions are trying to react to this with member mobilization via a general strike in 2014, or also various strikes in the public sector or demonstrations. But what you see, or at least what observers are saying, that you see the usual suspects. I leave it to your imagination what I mean by that. A third reason is the risk of burnouts of union representatives. They have its very demanding tasks. A fourth reason is that there is also pressure on the unions that the traditional channels for membership recruitment are under pressure. I can refer to the Ghent system, but also to the social elections every 4 years, where unions have difficulties to especially put young members on the candidate lists. And fifth reason is that the fact that Belgian unions have still substantial resources, personal and financial, to undertake some new things to experiment. I'm using a regression analysis, and for selecting the variables, I'm making use of the plant behavior theory as a way of framework for exploring union activism. This framework is linking intentions of behavior to 3 types of beliefs. The first one is union beliefs about the action itself, so union activism, and this could be linked to union instrumentalism and pro-union attitudes. A second belief is the subjective norms of significant others, family, friends, or co-workers, and what they think about union activism or the union. And then a very important one, a very important predictor is the belief of their own behavior control. This is the belief to what extent they think their own engagement could make a difference within the union. I also introduce in the regression models a number of other variables. So the past passive union participation and also the past active union participation. Third variable is attitudes towards organizing unionism. Then the ideological identification with between the member and the union, and then union loyalty is also a positive factor for explaining union activism. And a last variable is union apathy, that is a negative factor for explaining union activism. I send out a survey to the new members of a local of Belgian unions, new between single quotes because the maximum duration within the sample was 7 years. I use this period because within the literature on union retention, it looks like the first 5 to 7 years are important to keep the members in the union. After this period, there's a higher probability that you will stay in the union. I have to say this is a commissioned survey, so they explicitly asked me to do this. Union activists and reps are excluded from the sample. This local has no youth structures in place, and within the database I could not exclude a priori the members with already a union background, those members that are coming from another union. The response rate stands at 25%, and the median age of the members is 31 years, and the average member duration is 2 years and 5 months. This figure shows you the entry age of the union members. So what you see is that most of the new members are young, and there are some differences between men and women, and this could be explained by the sectors wherein the women are working, and also a bit linked to that, the education levels. Some of the men tend to join the union for the first time in their early 50s. This has to do with early retirement and the GAN system, which is an incentive to join the union when you are on early retirement. My dependent variable is a construct based on 4 items. And here you see the figure, here you see those 4 items. And I also make a differentiation between 4 categories based on age. So, for example, I'm willing to address family, friends, or colleagues and to convince them to join the union. About 1/3 is willing to do that between the age of, from the age between or younger than 24 years, and then also the young category between 25 and 35 years. And what you see is a bit the same pattern, that the younger categories are more willing to do those tasks than the older categories, especially the members that are over 55 years. And there are, of course, also differences between the tasks. It's more demanding to leafletting about union demands in the public spaces. So, for instance, only 50% of the young members are willing to do that, and 7% of the 55 years and older are willing to do that. So the findings in my first model, I only introduced the control variables: gender, age, educational level, labor market position, membership duration, and a dummy variable for previous membership in another union. What is positive for explaining union activism or the intent to take up a union task is a basic or lower education, and a negative is union membership duration. Second model, I introduced the independent variables. There are 6: previous and passive and union active participation, attitudes towards organizing, ideological congruence, union loyalty, union apathy. So what comes out of this is that the younger categories are more willing to take up union tasks. In a negative way, those members with an upper secondary level, members that have been active and also passive in the union before are more willing to take up tasks. Members with positive attitudes towards organizing unionism are more willing to take up tasks. And then if you look at ideological congruence compared to a weak ideological congruence, those members with no opinion about their ideological congruence and those with a moderate or strong ideological congruence are more willing to take up tasks. Union loyalty is also a positive factor, and surprisingly also members with union apathy, but although at the 10% level. Finally, the full model, I introduced there the focus model, focus variables. So the one variable is the satisfaction of union members with the union services. Then another one is the pro-union attitudes, the pro-union context, and their perceived self-control. And here, no longer the past active union participation is significant, but only the passive union participation. Again, the organizing unionism attitudes, people with no opinion about their ideological congruence between them and the union, union loyalty, the pro-union context is also positive, and especially a moderate or strong perceived self-control. Those members are very willing to take up union tasks. Then I did the same for the single items of my dependent variable. And there you see that some of the variables are robust, so moderate or strong perceived self-control, organizing unionism attitudes, passive union membership, union participation, and union loyalty. This one is not significant when it comes to leafletting, and then also the pro-union context is positive. There are some differences between the various tasks, so there are differences. Sometimes the age categories are significant and otherwise not, and the same accounts for educational levels, labor market position, and ideological congruence. What I can conclude from the behavior theory is the pro-union context is significant, and the behavioral self-control. What is not significant is the satisfaction with union services and pro-union attitudes. Regarding the other significant variables, union organizing attitudes are a positive predictor, but of course it's also a bit tautological, this explanation. Maybe those members have an active background in other social movement or community organizations. Loyal union members, they might think that they can change the union from within, so they raise their voice within the union. Also important, I think, is members with a passive participation in the union. So those who are reading the union literature or consulting the union website, those are also more likely to take up union tasks, and this supports a developmental view on union participation. What is less robust is the variable on active participation. Maybe there are limits to your active participation within the union. I think also the fact that the ideological congruence is mostly significant points to the fact that unions should have, I think, a political vision about organizing unionism and its objective, and articulate about this. The congruence is mostly weaker or moderate among the youngest age categories. And at the same time, I think organizing unionism has some promises. It might lessen the ideological unawareness of the new members and their feelings of apathy. At the same time, not every task appeals to everybody in terms of time or skill or stress, but I think it might be worthwhile for unions to widen their sights to all first-timers. It's not only the very young that are interested in taking up union tasks, it's also those members between 25 and 35 years, and also maybe the little bit older new members. Support for the developmental view on union participation. I think small union tasks might be more appealing or feasible for a larger pool of young members. It might mean a stepping stone to deeper union involvement later on, and it might also mitigate the demands of union reps by involving the rank and file. Limitations of my research, there might be a measurement effect. The survey was undertaken in a period where unions were preparing for protests against the government. Some of the variables are single point items. Of course, I'm talking about correlations, not causations, and not about actual behavior, but the intent to take up union tasks. I'm only introduced solely psychological factors and no other contextual factors. Some variables are omitted, like union support, union culture, union leadership, and of course I need more evidence from other unions and also from unions in other countries. On a policy level, I think also if a union wants to introduce some of those small tasks and if they might appeal to new members, it also means that you have to coordinate and steering those new tasks. So this means that within your union you have to reallocate your resources, and this could cause tensions or resistance within the union. It might also affect the status of existing union activists and reps, because there's a rebalance between them and those new members who are willing to take up union tasks. And it's of course also a form of top-down managed union revitalization. So it's still to be seen if this might be a path to follow and to really go into union revitalization. But at the same time, I think, at least for this Belgian case, there's currently an unidentified and unused critical mass of young and new members that could be explored. Thank you for your attention.